Okie dokie. Let's see here. Do you want to come sit up here, Suki? Well, one dog wants to come sit up here. Well, come here, Addison. 1 second, we're just situating the dogs. Who wants to sit up here? You want to come up here? Okay, come on, Mercy. Or Addison. One of you guys, come on up. Come on. Oh, come on. Come here. There's room. Or not. She just wants to stand up here, not sit. Well, we're going to do some sitting. So it's going to involve sitting down. Do you want to come up or do you want down? Come on. Sweet baby dogs. Sweet girls. Such good dogs. Come on up. Oh, come here. There we go. You giving up? You don't want to be up here? Okay. Never mind. I guess nobody wants to sit up here. You just want to get some pets and loves. Okay. Well, I'm going to read now. So you're welcome to come up if you want, but I'm going to read. Let's start with the introductory note here. Sorry, just situating myself. Introductory note to the first apology of Justin Martyr. Justin was a Gentile, but born in Samaria near Jacob's well. He must have been well educated. He had traveled extensively, and he seems to have been a person enjoying at least a competence. I'm assuming that has to do with money. Not sure. After two want up here. Okay. I think we finally have a dog that wants to sit up here. Okay, come here. Come here. Grunt, grunt, grunt. Should we put up the legs now? This has been a lot of readjustment before getting to reading. We've already been streaming for 3 minutes. We haven't even read a whole sentence yet. Well, I guess we did read a sentence. But okay. After trying all other systems, his elevated tastes and refined perceptions made him a disciple of Socrates and Plato. So he climbed towards Christ. As he himself narrates the story of his conversion, it need not be anticipated here. What Plato was feeling after, he found in Jesus of Nazareth. The conversion of such a man marks a new era in the gospel history. The sub-apostolic age begins with the first Christian author, the founder of theological literature. It introduced to mankind, as the mother of true philosophy, the despised teaching of those Galileans to whom their master had said, "You are the light of the world." And this is the epoch which forced this great truth upon the attention of contemplative minds. It was more than 100 years since the angels had sung goodwill to men, and that song had now been heard for successive generations, breaking forth from the lips of sufferers on the cross, among lions and amid blazing faggots. Here was a nobler stoicism that needed interpretation, not only choice spirits, despising the herd and boasting of a loftier intellectual sphere were its professors, but thousands of men, women, and children, withdrawing themselves not at all from the ordinary and humble lot of the people, were inspired by it to live and die heroically and sublimely. exhibiting a superiority to revenge and hate entirely unaccountable, praying for their enemies and seeking to glorify their God by love to their fellow man. And in spite of Gallios and Neros alike, the gospel was dispelling the gross darkness of this. Pliny's letter to Trajan is decisive evidence. Even in Seneca, we detect reflections of the day passed by him in his thoughts upon the delays of the divine justice. Hadrian's address to his soul in his dying moments is a tribute to the new ideas which had been sown in the popular mind. And now the Antonines, impelled by something in the age, came forward to reign as philosophers. At this moment, Justin Martyr confronts them like a Daniel. The little stone smites the imperial image in the face, not yet in the toes. He tells the professional philosophers on a throne how false and hollow is all wisdom that is not meant for all humanity, and that is not capable of leavening the masses. He exposes the impotency of even Socratic philosophy. He shows in contrast the force that works in the words of Jesus. He points out the regenerating power. It is the mission of Justin to be a star in the west, leading its wise men to the cradle of Bethlehem. The writings of Justin are deficient in charms of style, and for us there is something the reverse of attractive in the forms of thought which he had learned from the philosophers. If Plato had left us nothing but the Timaeus, a Renan would doubtless have approached him as a feeble intellectual power. I don't know exactly what Renan or Renan means. So a dancing master might criticize the movements of an athlete or the writhings of Saint Sebastian shot with arrows. The practical wisdom of Justin, using the rhetoric of his times and discomfiting false philosophy with its own weapons, is not appreciated by the fastidious Parisian. But the manly and heroic pleadings of the man for a despised people with whom he had boldly identified himself, the intrepidity with which he defends them before despots whose mere caprice might punish him with death. Above all, the undaunted spirit with which he exposes the shame and absurdity, of their inveterate superstition and reproaches the memory of Hadrian, whom Antoninus had defied, as he had defied Antoninus of loathsome history. These are characteristics which every instinct of the unvitiated soul delights to honor. Justin cannot be refuted by a sneer. He wore his philosopher's gown after his conversion as a token that he had attained the only true philosophy. And seeing that after the conflicts and tests of ages, it is the only philosophy that lasts and lives and triumphs. Its discoverer deserves the homage of mankind. Of the philosophic gown we shall hear again when we come to Tertullian. The residue of Justin's history may be found in the martyrdom and other pages soon to follow, as well in the following introductory note of the able translators, Messrs. Dodds and Reith. Monsieurs? I think it's Misters. MESSRS. That's some sort of specific word that it's abbreviated for that I'm not certain of. Justin Martyr was born in Flavia Neapolis, a city of Samaria, the modern Nablus. The date of his birth is uncertain, but may be fixed about AD 114. His father and grandfather were probably of Roman origin. Before his conversion to Christianity, he studied in the schools of the philosophers, searching after some knowledge which should satisfy the cravings of his soul. At last he became acquainted with Christianity, being at once impressed with the extraordinary fearlessness which the Christians displayed in the presence of death, and with the grandeur, stability, and truth of the teachings of the Old Testament. From this time he acted as an evangelist, taking every opportunity to proclaim the gospel as the only safe and certain philosophy, the only way to salvation. It is probable that he traveled much. We know that he was sometime in Ephesus, and he must have lived for a considerable period in Rome. Probably he settled in Rome as a Christian teacher. While he was there, the philosophers, especially the Cynics, plotted against him, and he sealed his testimony to the truth by martyrdom. The principal facts of Justin's life are gathered from his own writings. There is little clue to dates. It is agreed on all hands that he lived in the reign of Antoninus Pius, and the testimony of Eusebius and most credible historians renders it nearly certain that he suffered martyrdom in the reign of Marcus Aurelius. The Chronicon Paschale gives us the date 165 AD. The writings of Justin Martyr are among the most important that have come down to us from the 2nd century. He was not the first that wrote in apology in behalf of the Christians, but his apologies are the earliest extant. They are characterized by intense Christian fervor, and they give us an insight into the relations existing between heathens and Christians in those days. His other principal writing, the Dialogue with Trypho, is the first elaborate exposition of the reasons for regarding Christ as the Messiah of the Old Testament, and the first systematic attempt to exhibit the false position of the Jews in regard to Christianity. Many of Justin's writings have perished. Those works which have come to us bearing his name have been divided into 3 classes. The first class embraces those which are unquestionably genuine, the 2 apologies and the Dialogue with Trypho. Some critics have urged objections against Justin's authorship of the dialogue, but the objections are regarded now as possessing no weight. The second class consists of those works which are regarded by some critics as Justin's and by others as not his. They are 1, an address to the Greeks, 2, a oratory address to the Greeks, 3, on the sole government of God, 4, an epistle to Diognetus, 5, fragments from a work on the resurrection, 6, and other fragments. Whatever difficulty there may be in settling the authorship of these treatises, there is but one opinion as to their earliness. The latest of them, in all probability, was not written later than the 3rd century. Is this introductory note a little better, Suki? She's not grumbling and moving around quite as much. Although we did just have a nice long dog walk this morning, so she might just be ready for a little nap. The third class consists of those that are unquestionably not the works of Justin. These are an exposition of the true faith, replies to the Orthodox, Christian questions to Gentiles, Gentile questions to Christians, epistle to Zenos and Cyrenus, and 6, a refutation of certain doctrines of Aristotle. There is no clue to the date of the 2 last. There can be no doubt that the others were written after the Council of Nicaea, though immediately after the Reformation, Calvin and others appealed to the first as a genuine writing of Justin's. There is a curious question connected with the apologies of Justin, which have come down to us. Eusebius mentions 2 apologies, one written in the reign of Antoninus Pius, the other in the reign of Marcus Aurelius. Critics have disputed much whether we have these 2 apologies in those now extant. Some have maintained that what is now called the second apology was the preface of the first, and that the second is lost. Others have tried to show that the so-called second apology is the continuation of the first, and that the second is lost. Others have supposed that the 2 apologies which we have are Justin's 2 apologies, but that Eusebius was wrong in affirming that the second was addressed to Marcus Aurelius. And others maintain that we have in our 2 apologies the 2 apologies mentioned by Eusebius, and that our first is his first, and our second is his second. That does seem to be all the options possible. Okay, the first apology of Justin. Chapter 1, Address. To the Emperor Titus, Aelius, Adrianus, Antoninus, Pius, Augustus, Caesar, and to his son Verissimus the philosopher, and to Lucius the philosopher, the natural son of Caesar, and the adopted son of Pius, a lover of learning, and to the sacred Senate, with the whole people of the Romans, I, Justin, the son of Priscus, and grandson of Bacchius, natives of Flavia Neapolis in Palestine, present this address and petition in behalf of those of all nations who are unjustly hated and wantonly abused, myself being one of them. Chapter 2. Justice Demanded. Reason directs those who are truly pious and philosophical to honor and love only what is true, declining to follow traditional opinions. If these be worthless, for not only does sound reason direct us to refuse the guidance of those who did or taught anything wrong, but it is incumbent on the lover of truth, by all means, and if death be threatened even before his own life, to choose to do and say what is right. Do you then, since you are called pious and philosophers, guardians of justice, and lovers of learning, give good heed and hearken to my address? And if you are indeed such, it will be manifested. For we have come not to flatter you by this writing, nor please you by our address, but to beg that you pass judgment after an accurate and searching investigation, not flattered by prejudice or by a desire of pleasing superstitious men, nor induced by a rational impulse or evil rumors which have long been prevalent, to give a decision which will prove to be against yourselves. For as for us, we reckon that no evil can be done us unless we be convicted as evildoers, or be proved to be wicked men, and you can kill but not hurt us. Chapter 3. Claim of Judicial Investigation. But lest anyone think that this is an unreasonable and reckless utterance, we demand that the charges against the Christians be investigated, and that, if these be substantiated, they be punished as they deserve, or rather, indeed, we ourselves will punish them. But if no one can convict us of anything, true reason forbids you, for the sake of a wicked rumor, to wrong blameless men, and indeed, rather yourselves, who think fit to direct affairs not by judgment, but by passion. And every sober-minded person will declare this to be the only fair and equitable adjustment, namely, that the subjects render an unexceptional account of their own life and doctrine, and that, on the other hand, the rulers should give their decision in obedience not to violence and tyranny, but to piety and philosophy. For thus would both rulers and ruled reap benefit. For even one of the ancients somewhere said, unless both rulers and ruled philosophize, it is impossible to make states blessed. It is our task, therefore, to afford to all an opportunity of inspecting our life and teachings, lest, on account of those who are accustomed to be ignorant of our affairs, we should incur the penalty due to them for mental blindness. And it is your business, when you hear us, to be found, as reason demands, good judges. If, when you have learned the truth, you do not what is just, you will be before God without excuse. Chapter 4. Christians unjustly condemned for their mere name. By the mere application of a name, nothing is decided, either good or evil, apart from the actions implied in the name. And indeed, so far, at least as one may judge from the name we are accused of, we are most excellent people. But as we do not think it is just to beg to be acquitted on account of the name, if we be convicted as evildoers, so, on the other hand, if we be found to have committed no offense, either in the matter of thus naming ourselves, or of our conduct as citizens, it is your part very earnestly to guard against incurring just punishment, by unjustly punishing those who are not convicted. For from a name, neither praise nor punishment could reasonably spring, unless something excellent or base in action be proved. And those among yourselves who are accused, you do not punish before they are convicted. But in our case, you receive the name as proof against us. And this, although so far as the name goes, you ought rather to punish our accusers. For we are accused of being Christians, and to hate what is excellent. Christian is unjust. Again, if any of the accused deny the name and say that he is not a Christian, you acquit him as having no evidence against him as a wrongdoer. But if anyone acknowledge that he is a Christian, you punish him on account of this acknowledgement. Justice requires that you inquire into the life both of him who confesses and of him who denies, that by his deeds it may be apparent what kind of man each is. For as some who have been taught by the Master, Christ, not to deny him, give encouragement to others when they are put to the question, so in all probability do those who lead wicked lives give occasion to those who, without consideration, take upon them to accuse all the Christians of impiety and wickedness. And this also is not right. For of philosophy too, some assume the name and the garb who do nothing worthy of their profession. And you are well aware that those of the ancients whose opinions and teachings were quite diverse are yet all called by the one name of philosophers. And of these some taught atheism, and the poets who have flourished among you raise a laugh out of the uncleanness of Jupiter with his own children. And those who now adopt such instructions are not restrained by you, but on the contrary, you bestow prizes and honors upon those who euphoniously insult the gods. Chapter 5, Christians charged with atheism. Why then should this be? In our case, who pledge ourselves to do no wickedness, nor to hold these atheistic opinions, you do not examine the charges made against us, but yielding to unreasoning passion and to the instigation of evil demons, you punish us without consideration or judgment. For the truth shall be spoken, since of old these evil demons, affecting apparitions of themselves, both defiled women and corrupted boys, and showed such fearful sights to men, that those who did not use their reasoning in judging of the actions that were done were struck with terror. Being carried away by fear, and not knowing that these were demons, they called them gods, and gave to each the name which each of the demons chose for himself. And when Socrates endeavored by true reason and examination to bring these things to light and deliver men from the demons, then the demons themselves, by means of men who rejoiced in iniquity, compassed his death as an atheist and a profane person, on the charge that he was introducing new divinities. And in our case, they display a similar activity, for not only among the Greeks did reason, logos, prevail to condemn these things through Socrates, but also among the barbarians were they condemned by reason, or the word, the logos, himself, who took shape and became man, and was called Jesus Christ. And in obedience to him, we not only deny that they who did such things as these are gods, but assert that they are wicked and impious demons, whose actions will not bear comparison with those even of men desirous of virtue. Chapter 6, Charge of Atheism Refuted. Hence are we called atheists, and we confess that we are atheists so far as gods of this sort are concerned, but not with respect to the most true God, the Father of righteousness and temperance, and the other virtues, who is free from all impurity, but both him and the Son, who came forth from him, and taught us these things, and the host of the other good angels who follow and are made like to him, and the prophetic spirit we worship and adore, knowing them in reason and truth, and declaring without grudging to everyone who wishes to learn, as we have been taught. Chapter 7, Each Christian must be tried by his own life. But some, one will say, some have ere now been arrested and convicted as evildoers. For you condemn many a time after inquiring into the life of each of the accused severally, but not on account of those of whom we have been speaking. And this we acknowledge, that as among the Greeks, those who teach such theories as please themselves are all called by the one name, philosopher. Though their doctrines be diverse, so also among the barbarians, this name on which accusations are accumulated is the common property of those who are and those who seem wise. For all are called Christians. Wherefore we demand that the deeds of all those who are accused to you be judged in order that each one who is convicted may be punished. May be punished as an evildoer, and not as a Christian. And if it is clear that anyone is blameless, that he may be acquitted, since by the mere fact of his being a Christian, he does no wrong. For we will not require that you punish our accusers, they being sufficiently punished by their present wickedness and ignorance of what is right. Chapter 8, Christians confess their faith in God. And reckon you that it is for your sakes we have been saying these things. For it is in our power, when we are examined, to deny that we are Christians. But we would not live by telling a lie. For impelled by the desire of the eternal and pure life, we seek the abode that is with God, the Father and Creator of all, and hasten to confess our faith, persuaded and convinced, as we are, that they who have proved to God by their works that they followed him and loved to abide with him where there is no sin to cause disturbance, can obtain these things. This, then, to speak shortly, is what we expect and have learned from Christ and teach. And Plato, in like manner, used to say that Rhadamanthus and Minos would punish the wicked who came before them. And we say that the same thing will be done, but at the hand of Christ, and upon the wicked, in the same bodies united again to their spirits, which are now to undergo everlasting punishment. And not only, as Plato said, for a period of 1,000 years. And if anyone say that this is incredible or impossible, this error of ours is one which concerns ourselves only and no other person, so as long as you cannot convict us of doing any harm. Chapter 9, Folly of Idol Worship. And neither do we honor with many sacrifices and garlands of flowers such deities as men have formed and set in shrines and called gods, since we see that these are soulless and dead and have not the form of God. For we do not consider that God has such a form as some say that they imitate to his honor, but have the names and forms of those wicked demons which have appeared. For why need we tell you who already know into what forms the craftsmen carving and cutting, casting and hammering fashion the materials, and often out of vessels of dishonor, by merely changing the form and making an image of the requisite shape, they make what they call a god, which we consider not only senseless, but to be even insulting to God, who having ineffable glory and form, thus gets his name attached to things that are corruptible and require constant service. And that the artificers of these are both intemperate and, not to enter into particulars, are practiced in every vice, you very well know, even their own girls who work along with them, they corrupt. What infatuation that dissolute men should be said to fashion and make gods for your worship, and that you should appoint such men the guardians of the temples where they are enshrined, not recognizing that it is unlawful even to think or say that men are the guardian of gods. Chapter 10, How God is to be served. But we have received by tradition that God does not need the material offerings which men can give, seeing indeed that he himself is the provider of all things. And we have been taught and are convinced and do believe that he accepts those only who imitate the excellences which reside in him, temperance and justice and philanthropy, and as many virtues as are peculiar to a God who is called by no proper name. And we have been taught that he, in the beginning, did of his goodness, for man's sake, create all things out of unformed matter. And if men by their works show themselves worthy of this his design, they are deemed worthy. And so we have received of reigning in company with him, being delivered from corruption and suffering. For as in the beginning he created us when we were not, so do we consider that in like manner those who choose what is pleasing to him are on account of their choice deemed worthy of incorruption and of fellowship with him. For the coming into being at first was not in our own power, and in order that we may follow those things which please him, choosing them by means of the rational faculties he has himself endowed us with, he both persuades us and leads us to faith. And we think it for the advantage of all men that they are not restrained from learning these things which are even urged thereto. For the restraint which human laws could not effect, the Word, inasmuch as he is divine, would have effected, had not the wicked demons, taking as their ally the lust of wickedness, which is in every man, and which draws variously to all manner of vice, scattered many false and profane accusations, none of which attach to us. Chapter 11, What Kingdom Christians Look For. And when you hear that we look for a kingdom, you suppose without making any inquiry that we speak of a human kingdom, whereas we speak of that which is with God, as appears also from the confession of their faith, made by those who are charged with being Christians. though they know that death is the punishment awarded to him who so confesses. For if we looked for a human kingdom, we should also deny our Christ, that we might not be slain, and we should strive to escape detection, that we might obtain what we expect. But since our thoughts are not fixed on the present, we are not concerned when men cut us off, since also death is a debt which must at all events be paid. Chapter 12. Christians live as under God's eye. And more than all other men are we your helpers and allies in promoting peace, seeing that we hold this view, that it is alike impossible for the wicked, the covetous, the conspirator, and for the virtuous to escape the notice of God, and that each man goes to everlasting punishment or salvation according to the value of his actions. For if all men knew this, no one would choose wickedness even for a little, knowing that he goes to the everlasting punishment of fire, but would by all means restrain himself and adorn himself with virtue, that he might obtain the good gifts of God and escape the punishments. For those who, on account of the laws and punishments you impose, endeavor to escape detection when they offend, and they offend too, under the impression that it is quite possible to escape your detection, since you are but men, those persons, if they learned and were convinced that nothing, whether actually done or only intended, can escape the knowledge of God, would by all means live decently on account of the penalties threatened, as even you yourselves will admit. But you seem to fear lest all men become righteous, and you no longer have any to punish. Such would be the concern of public executioners, but not of good princes. But as we before said, we are persuaded that these things are prompted by evil spirits who demand sacrifices and service even from those who live unreasonably. But as for you, we presume that you who aim at a reputation for piety and philosophy will do nothing unreasonable. But if you also, like the foolish, prefer custom to truth, do what you have power to do. But just so much power have rulers who esteem opinion more than truth, as robbers have in a desert. And that you will not succeed is declared by the word, than whom after God who begat him. We know there is no ruler more kingly and just. For as all shrink from succeeding to the poverty or sufferings or obscurity of their fathers, so whatever the word forbids us to choose, the sensible man will not choose. That all these things should come to pass, I say our teacher foretold, he who is both Son and Apostle of God the Father of all, and the ruler Jesus Christ, from whom also we have the name of Christians, whence we become more assured of all things he taught us, since whatever he beforehand foretold should come to pass is seen in fact coming to pass. And this is the work of God, to tell of a thing before it happens, and as it was foretold, so to show it happening. It were possible to pause here and add no more, reckoning that we demand what is just and true. But because we are well aware that it is not easy suddenly to change a mind possessed by ignorance, we intend to add a few things for the sake of persuading those who love the truth, knowing that it is not impossible to put ignorance to flight by presenting the truth. Chapter 13. Christians serve God rationally. What sober-minded men, then, will not acknowledge that we are not atheists, worshiping as we do the maker of this universe, and declaring as we've been taught that he has no need of streams of blood and libations and incense, whom we praise to the utmost of our power by the exercise of prayer and thanksgiving for all things, wherewith we are supplied, as we have been taught, that the only honor that is worthy of him is not to consume by fire what he has brought into being for our sustenance, but to use it for ourselves and those who need, and with gratitude to him to offer thanks by invocations and hymns, for our creation and for all the means of health, and for the various qualities of the different kinds of things, and for the changes of the seasons, and to present before him petitions for our existing, again in incorruption through faith in him. Our teacher of these things is Jesus Christ, who also was born for this purpose, and was crucified under Pontius Pilate, procurator of Judea, in the times of Tiberius Caesar, and that we reasonably worship him, having learned that he is the Son of the true God himself, and holding him in the second place and the prophetic spirit in the third, we will prove, for they proclaim our madness to consist in this, that we give to a crucified man a place second to the unchangeable and eternal God, the creator of all. For they do not discern the mystery that is herein, to which, as we make it plain to you, we pray you to give heed. Chapter 14. The demons misrepresent Christian doctrine. For we forewarn you to be on your guard, lest those demons who we have been accusing should deceive you, and quite divert you from reading and understanding what we say. For they strive to hold you their slaves and servants, and sometimes by appearances in dreams, and sometimes by magical impositions, they subdue all who make no strong opposing effort for their own salvation. And thus do we also, since our persuasion by the word, stand aloof from them, in other words, the demons, and follow the unbegotten God through his Son. We who formerly delighted in fornication, but now embrace chastity alone. We who formerly used magical arts, dedicate ourselves to the good and unbegotten God. We who valued above all things the acquisition of wealth and possessions, now bring what we have into a common stock, and communicate to everyone in need. We who hated and destroyed one another, and on account of their different manners would not live with men of a different tribe, now, since the coming of Christ, live familiarly with them and pray for our enemies, and endeavor to persuade those who hate us unjustly to live comfortably to the good precepts of Christ, to the end that they may become partakers with us of the same joyful hope of a reward from God, the ruler of all. But lest we should seem to be reasoning sophistically, we consider it right, before giving you the promised explanation, to cite a few precepts given by Christ himself. And be it yours, as powerful rulers, to inquire whether we have been taught and do teach these things truly. Brief and concise utterances fell from him, for he was no sophist, but his word was the power of God. Chapter 15. What Christ himself taught. Concerning chastity, he uttered such sentiments as these: Whosoever looketh upon a woman to lust after her has committed adultery with her already in his heart before God. And if your right eye offend thee, cut it out, for it is better to thee to enter into the kingdom of heaven with one eye than having two eyes to be cast into everlasting fire. And whosoever shall marry her that is divorced from another husband commits adultery. And there are some who have been made eunuchs of men, and some who were born eunuchs, and some who have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. But all cannot receive this saying, so that all who by human law are twice married are in the eye of our master sinners, and those who look upon a woman to lust after her. For not only he who in act commits adultery is rejected by him, but also he who desires to commit adultery, since not only our works, but also our thoughts are open before God. And many, both men and women, who have been Christ's disciples from childhood remain pure at the age of 60 or 70 years. And I boast that I could produce such from every race of men. For what shall I say, too, of the countless multitude of those who have reformed intemperate habits and learned these things? For Christ called not the just nor the chaste to repentance, but the ungodly and the licentious and the unjust. His words being, I came not to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. For the heavenly Father desires rather the repentance than the punishment of the sinner. And of our love to all he taught thus, if you love them that love you, what new thing do you? Even fornicators do this. But I say unto you, pray for your enemies, and love them that hate you, and bless them that curse you, and pray for them that despitefully use you, and that we should communicate to the needy, and do nothing for glory. He said, give to him that ask, and from him that would borrow turn not away. If you lend to them of whom you hope to receive, what new thing do you? Even the publicans do this. Lay not up for yourselves treasure upon earth, where moth and rust does corrupt, and where robbers break through, but lay up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where neither moth nor rust does corrupt. For what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for it? Lay up treasure, therefore, in heaven, where neither moth nor rust, nor rust does corrupt. And be you kind and merciful, as your Father also is kind and merciful, and makes his sun to rise on sinners and the righteous and the wicked. Take no thought on what you shall eat or what you shall put on. Are you not better than the birds and the beasts? And God feeds them. Take no thought, therefore, what you shall eat or what you shall put on, for your heavenly Father knows that you have need of these things. But seek you the kingdom of heaven, and all these things shall be added unto you. For where his treasure is, there also is the mind of man. And do not these things to be seen of men, otherwise you have no reward from your Father which is in heaven. I think that's probably a pretty nice place to stop. I've got a lot of burps today. Just finished a nice little brunch.